Hello everybody, Brian Davis, Construction Solutions Manager here at Toromont Cat. Been with Toromont for over 13 years, and prior to that I grew up in my family's business in the Toronto area, so I've been around heavy equipment my whole life. You might say I bleed yellow. Love dirt, love moving dirt. So I'm here today with my colleague Dan Martin to talk about innovation and technology and how it can help customers manage their business. I've worked with Dan for a number of years here at Toromont, and he's taught me quite a bit when it comes to machine connectivity. So Dan, welcome. Glad you could join me today.
Thanks very much, Brian. And it's amazing I was able to teach you anything over these last 13, 15 years that we've been together. But, well, I guess an introduction for myself. I've been with Toromont since 2006, so knocking on 15 years now. I'm looking after the connectivity and condition monitoring teams here at Toromont. And when I first started, we had about 200, 300 connected assets, and now we're just over 30,000 connected machines.
Holy man, that's a lot.
Quite a growth curve over the last few years, and it's growing exponentially as we speak.
Welcome to the Building Tomorrow podcast, where we dig deep into the Eastern Canada construction industry. With Toromont Cat specialists, we discuss heavy equipment, industry trends, and challenges affecting your business. All right, so Dan, we talk a lot about connectivity, but really, what's it all mean? What benefits do customers get for getting connected?
Yeah, there's lots of layers to connectivity, and I think 5 main buckets that we would put things into. So really what we're all about is trying to achieve the lowest lifecycle ownership costs.
Yeah.
And we do that by making sure that machines are available.
Yeah.
There's no surprises that the machine's not going to start or stop working when you need it. And when they are working, we achieve the highest productivity, moving the most amount of dirt, as little time as possible.
Yeah.
Those are sort of the 3 main buckets. And the other ones that kind of get overlooked a little bit are just as important as anything is operator safety. And even not just the operators, but the people around them as well.
Sounds like a lot of good buckets there.
Yep.
From an ex-owning standpoint, obviously cost reduction, huge.
Yep.
Safety is always a big bucket. And of course, productivity. You gotta be efficient in today's world.
Sure.
There's no margin for error.
Absolutely. And I know the last thing that we also talk about more and more these days is environmental impact. So we want to leave Earth a better place than when we started, and trying to reduce emissions.
Talking about emissions, one of the things that I talk to with customers all the time is looking at their idle time. We see some machines out there with staggering idle time, 50 to 60%. Ludicrous, right?
Right.
I remember giving a presentation a couple of years ago to a fairly good-sized contractor and just showed them what a 10% reduction in idle time on their heavy fleet only could mean to the bottom line.
Yep.
And over a 5-year period, like it was about $1 million in cash in their pocket just to reduce the idle time by 10%.
It's crazy.
The owner just about fell off his chair and kind of looked around the room and said, we got to take a look at this.
I totally get that. A lot of times people don't know how much machines are idling, right? You don't know until you have that data staring you in the face. You have an excavator sitting around idling half the day, right? Being able to monitor it is the first step in the battle. Getting your operators in line to be able to follow that plan is the other thing.
It seems staggering. And I know you and your team put together some research on this.
Yeah.
Fuel's only part of the story, right?
Absolutely. The overall ownership cost of that machine, take an excavator for example, right? You're going to keep it in their fleet for 10,000 hours. So if you're idling 50% of the time, that's 5,000 hours of unnecessary runtime.
Crazy.
It's just crazy. So everybody thinks of the fuel first off that you're wasting. But, if you're following a 500-hour maintenance schedule, that's like 10 maintenance
10 unnecessary oil changes.
That's right. And it's not just oil either, right? You got a lot of other things you got to touch on when that machine's running. So maintenance is definitely a big factor in there.
Yep.
And the biggest one is depreciation. Think of when you go to sell that machine. You've got one tractor that's got 5,000 hours on it, and the other one's got 10,000 hours on it, right? There's a big savings there when it goes across the auction block or you sell it privately, right?
Similar to like a car, you got a 5-year-old car with 100,000 kilometers on it versus a 5-year-old car that's got 200,000 kilometers on it.
Exactly.
It's amazing. That engine's just sitting there turning over.
Right.
You're just basically pouring cash down the drain. So, we talked a lot about the idle time side of it, Dan, and monitoring your fleet, but I got to think that, there's a lot more advantages to being connected to your equipment.
Sure. So another really popular use of monitoring your equipment would be for either operator behavior or for maintenance planning. And you can do that through monitoring fault codes.
Yep.
If an operator has let's say transmission abuse events, right? That's a good example, right?
Yeah.
So you can easily see those kinds of events pop up in real time on your dashboard, or even get the alert through to your phone. Especially if you have new operators or operators are switching between machines. There's going to be a certain level of comfort from one machine to the next, and maybe they don't know all the ins and outs of running a machine. So
these could be like abuse things, or they could be just warnings, right? Like an overheat or
yeah,
something like
totally.
That. Yeah.
And I'm sure from your experience, Brian, you've probably seen a few stories in the field.
Yeah. And I remember a customer, bought a fleet of articulated trucks, and they were getting a fault code across the dashboard repeatedly on the one truck. And obviously, fault code, what is it? Everybody freaks out. So we dig into it and find out what it is. And it ended up being a harsh shift. The operator was going from forward to reverse without stopping. Not necessarily a great thing to do, especially when you're loaded with a pile of dirt in the back.
40 tons of rock in the back.
Yeah, exactly. So, the customer was appreciative to understand then what the fault code was, and they used that as the opportunity to go and coach the operator and say, hey, you know what?
Right.
You're doing this wrong. You need to make sure the truck stops before you fire it into reverse.
Right.
Ultimately, by getting that fault code, digging into it and using it as a coaching opportunity, save themselves a pile of money on a powertrain rebuild down the road when after a while things are going to grenade. They're going to blow up, and that's never a good thing.
No, I know. And I think when we launched the Tier 4 final machines, another really popular, or not say popular, but that's the wrong word.
Tier 4 final is not popular, Dan.
Another common occurrence would be the emergency shutdown, right? So for those that aren't familiar, Tier 4 final machine, you got off, and then you got emergency off. A lot of people aren't familiar with the cool down process that happens, and they hear the engine running, and so they keep turning the switch, and they go right to the emergency off. And that throws a fault code every time, and it's for good reason, right? You don't want to be shutting down those turbos while they're screaming hot and preventing the cool down cycle and getting all that DEF back in the tank and stuff. So
if I'm correct on this, Dan, that's still the most common fault code we see, correct?
It still is, yeah.
Well, we got more coaching to do then.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, no, exactly. What about like managing fleets? I would think as a fleet manager, being able to keep an eye on things has got to be a major upside. I know from experience, foremen, superintendents, they can be very good at hiding machines. Somebody needs this machine on this side of town, and somebody needs the same machine on the other side of town. But the first guy's not letting it up because he's using it.
Oh yeah.
Then I go and rent a machine from a rental company. And then I look at my dashboard and realize that machine hasn't moved in 3 weeks.
That's painful. I know. Your connectivity means a lot of things to different people, right? If you are a single owner operator of the machine, you pretty much know where that machine is because you're sitting in it.
Hopefully. It all depends on what you did Sunday night, right? Monday morning could be a little difficult.
I've worked with a lot of customers that started off with that single machine, and now they've got 10, 15, 20 machines, and it becomes really unmanageable if you don't know where everybody is. All of those kind of utilization things that you want to keep track of, those are really easy to do with connectivity. Say 30-ton excavators, right? And you've got one out on rent. We can include any of our rental machines in your fleet so you can see the whole picture together.
Again, we had a customer who had some operators complaining about fuel burn on machines at one point. And so the fleet operations manager was asking, is there any way we can have a look at what's going on here?
Sure.
So we did some very simple fuel burn report and showed that, in actual fact, the operators were claiming they were running 13 hours a day. They did one day. Most days was 10. And at the end of the shift, the fuel tanks were well over half full. The fuel burn that they were reporting back to the office was not exactly real life. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the next step was the operations manager's like, where do I get this information? I need this.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what you can see, at least for the geeks like me, right? I love that stuff. But, it keeps track of every time the injector is fired. It's down to the milliliter. It's crazy how accurate that fuel information is. So, fuel is getting expensive. It's not the 50 cents a liter, right? Yeah. Knowing to the penny how much fuel you burned on the last job to move the same amount of dirt is really helpful in putting together your bid for the next job.
Because there's no margin for error. You have a rounding error, you will lose the bid. It's pretty crazy, and it's pretty tight bidding out there.
Yeah, for sure.
We know that connectivity is growing. You said when you started with Toromont, there was 200 assets, and now we're north of 30,000. Like all the rest of the technology in our world, I don't think it's going away until the robots take over and annihilate us all. But when customers look at connectivity and they think about, what kind of values can we realize? What kind of tip do they need to know off the hand? Like you said, the one guy started with one machine. And we have other customers out there that have hundreds of machines scattered over multiple provinces, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of people that are just starting to get into it, right? So
for sure.
My biggest advice to any customer who's just sort of starting their journey with getting their fleet connected is, don't boil the ocean.
Right.
What you need today is maybe not what you need 2 years from now.
Don't
cripple yourself by limiting what kind of data you can get off a machine. And I say that because there are devices that are, very affordable, just give you hours and location only, and we can pull that on anything, from a pump to a light stand.
Oh, yeah.
You may not need that data today, but having that historical record 2 years down the road, that can be really useful information for you.
Right.
I would just say start with the basics. If you just need hours and location today, great. Don't limit the device that you put on there to only that information, because you're probably going to need more very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And then they want more immediately, right? So
right. I look at this stuff today and I think back, to my family's business. And when I was a kid, my father would hand me a big pile of scratched out notes. Yeah. And that was before the days of computers and personal laptops and stuff like that. So it was all handwritten. I used to write them all out. We were doing that well over 30 years ago. And this is the stuff that's instantaneously available today.
Yeah.
It seems daunting. It seems like, holy crap, there's all this stuff out there. Like you talked about 200 data points a second. Like the reality of it is, if you're just getting into this, the advice I always say, you know what? You eat an elephant one bite at a time.
Yep.
So start slow, start into it, dip your toe, and then work your way up, right?
Yep.
We were talking about it growing, right, Dan? What other things, can we talk about in terms of this connectivity space?
Yeah, so on the high end, of course, we've got some mining customers in particular that have local Wi-Fi networks that the machines are communicating over, and you can get 250 data points a second off of those machines.
Holy man.
In real time, right? So they can monitor their productivity or even monitor things before they become fault codes. Right. It's amazing how many things we're connecting on job sites anymore. It used to be that our connected assets were 100% CAT. Now, I would be surprised if 60% of our connected assets are CAT.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So you're connecting all the other manufacturers, and then you also mentioned things like light plants, and we can even connect buckets now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and even machines are starting to get smarter to even know what bucket is attached to them. Not everything needs to have a cellular data plan, but maybe a Bluetooth device is appropriate.
Yeah.
We have customers connecting up their portable toilets on job sites.
Oh, wow.
And I had a good laugh at that because I thought, who's stealing toilets?
Who's the guy looking at the maintenance schedule on the toilets?
That's right. And it's a dirty job, but somebody's going to do it, right? So their whole plan was they connected up their toilets, and when those two things are together, when you got a toilet in range of the truck, it says, hey, it was serviced at this date and time.
Wow. One of the things that I get told by customers all the time, they're like, make it easy for me. I don't want to go looking. I don't want to go hunting. I just want to click a button, boom, I want the information.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? We've got big customers, hundreds of employees, and they have people that load up the screen and watch it all day long. And then we've got smaller guys that are they're out there busy working all day long, right? And they still want to be able to review what's up with their fleet, and maybe they want to get a alert in their pocket when something abnormal is happening. 6 o'clock, if you start your day with your bowl of Cheerios and a coffee, and you want to review what your fleet was up to yesterday, you get a report in your inbox of what everybody was doing the day before.
So you got stuff that's just once a day, kind of twice a day, and then you've got all the way up to pretty nearly breadcrumb trail, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I got to assume that there's all different levels of costs associated with.
Yeah, totally. And that's another arrow of progress. I mean, connecting a machine today is literally 10 times cheaper than it was 10 years ago, right? It's it's crazy how much it's dropped, and I'm sure that trend is going to keep going.
Oh, yeah.
We are in kind of a unique place. I'm very fortunate to work for Toromont in that, we have other ways of recovering revenue than selling subscriptions, right? So we have packages that cost nothing, right? We have no subscription fees.
For sure.
But when working with mixed fleets, and that's a big reason why our numbers have changed so dramatically over the years, we don't have to live and die by subscription fees, right? We make our packages very affordable for connecting up the fleet because it's a means to the end, right? We don't want to have connectivity as a barrier to getting all of this great information out of your fleet, right?
And the timeliness of delivering delivering this information to customers.
Yeah.
I remember listening to one of our other colleagues talking about a guy getting information about, he's got a problem with his excavator, and we got an oil pressure problem, and the guy's on the phone with the, technical support that just called him to tell him about the oil pressure problem, and he goes, yeah, I know, I'm kind of covered in oil, and I got 20 trucks waiting to get loaded, so I've got more of a blood pressure problem right now. And he laughed it off, and he was a pretty good sport about it, but, it's one of those things where... Well, we didn't get there just in time.
Yeah.
I know of another customer that, got a bad sample on an engine and got a call in the field to say, hey, you know what? That engine is showing signs of problems. You may want to shut it down. And he's like, yeah, that's why there's a hole in the block. The piston just flew out of it, But, it was an example of where timeliness of information can really help a customer out.
For sure. Of course, we like to say the meat in the seat is always the first person to react, right? The guy, if he's sitting through an audible alarm, he's got to be responsible ultimately, or she has got to be responsible to shut down that machine in a safe manner, right? And go and inspect what's wrong, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it takes me a minute to go and tell you about it, but you're not going to run that machine for a minute with no oil in it.
Odds are the operator's already gotten the alarm in the cab and the lights flashing, so they should be shutting it off as it is already.
Exactly. Right? Every job site, every machine requires a pre-start inspection, right? That's one of the things the ministry looks for, and the first thing they audit when they walk onto a job site. When was the last time it was inspected, and so on. And they want to see that proof, and it's for good reason.
Absolutely.
And it's the same reason why fire trucks get washed every day. It's not because they're getting dirty every day. It's because they're looking for leaks and things that could be a problem down the road. No magic wizardry required. You don't have to install anything on the machine.
It's funny when you say magic wizardry, like customers think, oh, I've got this data box hooked up to my machine. It's going to give me stuff on my computer. Voila, my business is instantly going to run smoother. I'm going to make more money.
That's right.
There's a pitfall there, right? We got to be a little more careful there.
Yeah, you kind of have to approach it with a strategy. You got to really focus in on something. So like idle time's a great one to start with.
Sure.
And you don't have to go from 50% idle time to 10% idle time overnight. We have lots of customers trying to get to 20% idle time, and that's a great milestone to hit. You're saving a lot of unplanned maintenance. Like maybe your next thing is operator performance or machine overloaded events or something like that. You can kind of work on a campaign. Just work it in there.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, connecting your machine is not a magic wand, right? You can connect it up, you get tons of data flowing in, but it's not going to run your business for you.
Yeah. It's like anything, right? Information is power, but what you do with that information is the powerful part.
Yeah. We're also finding that there's quite a few customers that find information overload, right? If they're doing a really good job, they're doing inspections, all that stuff. There's a lot of stuff that piles up in a day. So we have another sort of skunkworks team in Toromont. It's a group of condition monitoring analysts.
Cool.
That's our whole mission in life, is just to weed out the noise and focus on the things that you really need to take action on.
That's what I like. Make my life easier. Sweet. All right, Dan. So if we look down the road, the way things are changing now, should we look more than 5 months down the road? But let's go bold, right? Let's go 5 years, 10 years down the road. I know in the equipment space, we're very heavily into now the remote control space.
Right.
Obviously, the next big thing in machines is autonomy, or have an operator doing something different, and the machine doing things by itself. Flip that into the telematics space. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's amazing how the pace of this stuff is just accelerated. Data trickles down to the more consumer grade stuff.
Sure.
But, the remote control capabilities, we're going to see a lot more of that in the future, especially as operators are hard to get, right? It's easier for a factory to build a machine than it is for us to clone operators. So I think every new mining proposal we've seen has had some level of autonomy. People are used to their Teslas roaming around with getting firmware updates. Well, it's no different in the construction space as well. You can do that, from your couch at 9 o'clock at night if you wanted to.
Sitting back, watching the hockey game, having a beer. Oh, I got to update my machines. Better put the right software in the right unit. I don't want my dozer, trying to go dig like an excavator.
That could be a problem.
So I guess, the message, don't handicap yourself today by, saying, oh, I don't need any of that.
That's right.
Down the road, where's your business going to go in a few years? Look at the last 18 months. There was this little thing that kind of hit the world by storm. Look at how companies have had to, use the word pivot and try and maintain their business activities by doing things remotely. And you got to obviously protect your investment and look to the future.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Just as we're trying to keep tabs of everybody working from home these days, you want to be able to make sure your machines are working well out in the field as well.
Awesome. Well, I think we've kicked the connectivity can down the road pretty good here, Dan. Hopefully our listeners get something out of it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Building Tomorrow podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to subscribe so that you can join us again. For more info and tips from our specialists, check out our website and the Building Tomorrow blog. See you next month.